Every Saturday afternoon, a young woman named Clara walked through the doors of Greenfield Senior Care Home with a bag over her shoulder and a quiet purpose in her heart. She was 26 years old. She worked at a bookstore during the week, but on Saturdays, she was something else entirely. She was a volunteer pianist. And for the past 2 years, she had been playing music for people the world seemed to have forgotten. The care home sat at the edge of town, tucked behind a row of old oak trees that had been there longer than anyone could remember. It was not a fancy place. The walls were painted a soft yellow that had faded over time. The floors creaked in certain spots. The smell of coffee and cleaning solution hung in the air. But there was warmth there too, in the voices of the nurses, in the laughter that sometimes echoed down the hallways, in the way sunlight poured through the wide lobby windows every afternoon. Clara had started volunteering after her grandmother passed away. Her grandmother had spent her final months in a place just like this one, and Clara remembered how lonely it had felt. How quiet, how her grandmother's eyes would light up whenever someone came to visit, and how they would dim again when they left. That memory stayed with her. It followed her home. It whispered to her at night, and eventually, she decided to do something about it. She could not save her grandmother, but maybe she could bring a little bit of light to others. So every Saturday, Clara sat at the old piano in the lobby and played. She played old songs and new ones. She played hymns and jazz and classical pieces. Sometimes the residents gathered around her. Sometimes they listened from their wheelchairs in the hallway. Sometimes they just sat in their rooms with the doors open, letting the music drift in like a visitor they did not have to entertain. Clara loved those moments. She loved watching their faces change when a familiar melody reached their ears. She loved the way music could unlock something deep inside a person. A memory. A feeling. A piece of themselves they thought they had lost. But not everyone responded. Some residents stared blankly at the walls no matter what she played. Some had traveled so far into their own minds that no song could reach them. Clara understood this. She accepted it. She played for them anyway, hoping that somewhere inside, they could still hear. And then, one rainy afternoon in October, a new resident arrived. His name was Leonard. He was 78 years old. He had thin white hair and deep-set eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken thoughts. He came in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse who spoke to him in a cheerful voice. He did not respond. He did not look at her. He did not look at anyone. Clara noticed him the moment he entered the lobby. There was something different about him. Something heavy. The other residents, even the quiet ones, still had a kind of presence. They nodded when spoken to. They blinked when someone passed by, but Leonard sat completely still, like a man made of stone. The nurse wheeled him to a spot near the window. She adjusted his blanket. She told him lunch would be ready soon. He said nothing. He did not even turn his head. Clara watched from the piano bench. She had seen sadness before in this place. She had seen loneliness and confusion and grief. But this was different. This was not sadness. This was absence. Like he had already left the world, but his body had not caught up yet. Over the next few days, Clara asked the nurses about him. They told her he had been at the home for about 3 weeks. His family had admitted him after his wife passed away. They said he had early signs of memory problems, but nothing severe. He could still walk short distances. He could still feed himself. He could still understand what was happening around him, but he did not speak. Not a single word since the day he arrived. Not to the nurses. Not to the doctors. Not to his own children when they came to visit, which was not often. He simply sat by the window and stared at nothing. He ate when food was placed in front of him. He slept when night came. But he never spoke. He never smiled. He never cried. He was just there. One of the older nurses, a kind woman who had worked at the home for nearly 20 years, told Clara something she would not forget. She said, "I have seen a lot of people come through these doors. Some of them forget who they are. Some of them fight to hold on. But that man over there, he has not forgotten anything. He remembers everything. That is the problem. He is not lost. He is hiding. Clara thought about those words for a long time. She started paying closer attention to Leonard. She watched the way his eyes moved when someone walked past. She noticed how his fingers sometimes twitched when music played. Even though the rest of his body stayed still, she saw the way he looked out the window. Not at the sky or the trees, but at something far beyond them. Something only he could see. He was not empty. He was full. Full of something so heavy that he could not carry it and speak at the same time. Clara decided then that she would try to reach him. She did not know why. She had no special connection to him. She had never spoken to him. But something in her heart told her that he needed what she had to offer. Not just music, but presence. Patience. Someone who would not give up. So she began to play for him. Every Saturday, she chose songs she thought he might remember. Old love songs from the 1950s. Classical pieces that were popular when he was young. Hymns that might have played in the churches of his childhood. She played them slowly, carefully, watching his face for any sign of recognition. Nothing. Week after week, she played. Week after week, he sat motionless by the window. His expression never changed. His eyes never moved toward her. It was like playing for a ghost. Some of the nurses told her not to waste her time. They said some people were beyond reaching. They said she should focus on the residents who could still respond. Still smile. Still say thank you. But Clara did not listen. She kept playing for Leonard. She kept watching. She kept waiting. Because deep down, she believed that everyone had a door, a way in, a song that could unlock whatever they had sealed away inside. She just had to find it, and she was not the kind of person who gave up easily. So every Saturday, she sat at that old piano in the faded yellow lobby. And she played. For the ones who clapped. For the ones who cried. For the ones who remembered. And for the one man who sat alone by the window, wrapped in silence, carrying a secret only he understood. She did not know it yet, but everything was about to change. A single piece of forgotten music was waiting for her. And when she found it, nothing would ever be the same again. Not for her, and not for him. 5 weeks passed. Then 6. Then 7. Clara kept her promise to herself. Every Saturday, she arrived at Greenfield Senior Care Home, sat down at the old piano, and played. And every Saturday, she watched Leonard from the corner of her eye, hoping for something. A glance. A movement. A flicker of recognition behind those distant eyes. But there was nothing. He sat in the same spot by the window. His hands rested on the arms of his wheelchair. His gaze stayed fixed on something far away. Something no one else could see. The music filled the room, wrapped around him, and passed right through like he was made of air. Clara tried everything she could think of. She played big band songs from the 1940s. She played Frank Sinatra. She played old waltzes and slow ballads that she imagined might have played at dances when Leonard was young. She played church hymns, thinking maybe faith had been part of his life. She even learned a few folk songs from his generation, the kind that families used to sing around kitchen tables. Nothing worked. Some days, she felt like giving up. Not on volunteering. She would never stop that. But on Leonard specifically. Maybe the nurses were right. Maybe some doors were locked forever. Maybe whatever he had sealed inside himself was never meant to be opened again. But then she would look at him. Really look at him. And she would see his fingers. They would twitch sometimes. Just slightly. Just for a moment. Like they remembered something his mind refused to speak. That small movement kept her going. One Saturday, in late November, the weather turned cold and gray. Rain tapped against the windows in a steady rhythm. The lobby felt quieter than usual. Most of the residents had stayed in their rooms, wrapped in blankets, watching television or sleeping through the afternoon. Clara sat at the piano and played a few of her usual pieces. But her heart was not in it. She felt tired. Not just physically, but somewhere deeper. She had been coming here for over 2 years now. She had touched many lives. She had seen people smile, cry, remember, and heal. But Leonard remained a mystery she could not solve. She finished a song and let her hands fall to her lap. For a long moment, She just sat there, staring at the keys. Maybe it was time to accept that not everyone could be reached. She sighed and started to gather her things. But before she stood up, something caught her eye. There was an old wooden cabinet near the piano. It had been there as long as Clara could remember. Inside were stacks of sheet music, some donated by families, some left behind by residents who had passed on. Clara had looked through it a few times over the years, but most of the music was faded, torn, or too damaged to read. Today, for some reason, she felt drawn to it. She walked over and opened the cabinet. The smell of old paper rose up to meet her. She began flipping through the stacks. Most of it was what she expected. Hymn books, with broken spines, Christmas carols with coffee stains, a few classical pieces with notes scribbled in the margins. And then, near the bottom of the pile, something fell out. It was a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age, and soft from years of being forgotten. The edges were worn. One corner was torn. But the handwriting on it was still clear. Someone had written out a piece of music by hand. The notes were carefully drawn. The bars were straight. Whoever had written this had done so with love. There was no title, no name, no date, just the music itself. Clara held it up to the light and studied it. It was a simple melody. Nothing complicated. But there was something about it that made her pause. Something tender. Something deeply personal. She did not know why, but she felt like she was holding someone's heart in her hands. She looked over at Leonard. He was still sitting by the window, still staring at nothing. The rain outside had grown heavier. The room was dim. Clara walked back to the piano. She placed the old sheet of music on the stand. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She almost did not play it. It felt too private, too sacred, like reading someone's diary out loud without their permission. But something told her to try. She pressed the first note, then the second. Then her hands began to move on their own, following the melody as it unfolded. The song was beautiful. Not in a grand way. Not in a way that demanded attention. It was quiet. Gentle. Like a whisper meant for only one person to hear. It rose and fell like breath. It ached in places. It smiled in others. It told a story without words. Clara played it slowly, letting each note hang in the air before the next one came. She was so lost in the music that she did not notice what was happening behind her. She did not see Leonard's hands stop their restless twitching. She did not see his head turn. Slowly. Toward the piano. She did not see him grip the arms of his wheelchair and push himself up. She did not notice any of it until a shadow fell across the keys. Clara stopped playing. Her breath caught in her throat. Leonard was standing beside her. He had walked all the way across the room, something the nurses said he rarely did anymore. His face was pale. His lips were pressed together, and his eyes, those distant, faraway eyes, were now fixed directly on her. No, not on her. On the sheet of music. His whole body was trembling. Not from weakness, from something else. Something deep and powerful that had been buried for a very long time. Clara did not move. She did not speak. She barely breathed. Leonard reached out with a shaking hand. His fingers touched the edge of the paper. He held it like it might crumble to dust, if he was not careful. And then, for the first time in months, he spoke. His voice was rough. Cracked. Like a door that had not been opened in years. But the words were clear. "Where did you find this?" Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She had imagined this moment so many times. She had pictured what it would feel like to finally break through. But now that it was happening, she could not find the words. She pointed to the cabinet. Her hand was shaking too. Leonard looked at the cabinet, then back at the paper. A tear slipped down his cheek, then another. He did not wipe them away. He just stood there, holding the music, crying without a sound. Clara finally found her voice. It came out as a whisper. "What is it? What is this song?" Leonard did not answer right away. He closed his eyes. His lips moved slightly, like he was praying, or remembering. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely above a breath. I wrote this, a long time ago, for someone I loved more than anything in this world. He opened his eyes and looked at Clara. For the first time, she saw him. Not the silent man by the window. Not the ghost who refused to speak. She saw a man carrying a weight so heavy it had stolen his voice. A man who had just been handed back a piece of his soul he thought was gone forever. I thought I lost it, he said. I thought I lost her. Clara did not understand. Not yet. But she knew, in that moment, that everything had changed. The song had unlocked something, and whatever came next would be the most important story she had ever been part of. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Leonard stood beside the piano, holding the old sheet of music like it was the most precious thing in the world. His hands trembled. Tears rolled down his cheeks, disappearing into the lines of his weathered face. He made no effort to wipe them away. Clara stayed on the piano bench, afraid to speak, afraid to break whatever had just opened inside him. She had waited weeks for this moment. She had played song after song, hoping for even the smallest response. And now that it had finally happened, she did not know what to do. The rain continued to fall outside. The lobby was quiet. Somewhere down the hall, a clock ticked softly. The world seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Leonard lowered himself into the chair beside the piano. His movements were slow and careful, like a man who had forgotten how to trust his own body. He placed the sheet of music on his lap and smoothed it gently with his fingertips. Clara watched him. She wanted to ask 100 questions, but something told her to wait, to let him come to her in his own time. After what felt like forever, Leonard spoke again. His voice was still rough, still rusty from months of silence, but it was steadier now, like a river that had been blocked for too long and was finally finding its way again. Her name was Rose, he said. My wife. We were married for 54 years. Clara felt her heart tighten. She had suspected something like this. A loss. A grief too heavy to carry. But hearing him say it out loud made it real, in a way she had not been prepared for. Leonard kept his eyes on the paper as he continued. I met her when I was 23 years old. She was 21. I saw her at a dance in the church hall downtown. She was wearing a yellow dress. Her hair was pinned up with little white flowers, and when she smiled, I swear the whole room went quiet. At least it did for me. A small, sad smile crossed his face. It was the first time Clara had ever seen him smile. I was not a brave man back then. I was shy, nervous. I did not know how to talk to women. But something about her made me want to try. So I walked up to her and asked her to dance. My voice was shaking so bad I could barely get the words out, but she said yes. She took my hand, and we danced. And by the end of that night, I knew I was going to marry her. He paused. His fingers traced the edges of the sheet music. I did not have much to offer her. I worked at a factory. I lived in a small apartment with a leaky roof. I could not afford fancy rings or nice dinners. But I could play the piano. My mother had taught me when I was a boy. So I decided to write her a song, something that was just for her, something no one else in the world would ever have. Clara looked down at the handwritten notes on the paper. Now she understood why it had felt so personal, so sacred. It was not just a melody. It was a love letter, written in music. I worked on it for months, Leonard said. I stayed up late at night. I played it over and over until my fingers hurt. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted her to hear it and know exactly how I felt about her. He took a slow, shaky breath. I played it for her on our wedding night. We did not have a big reception, just a small party at her parents' house. But at the end of the night, I sat down at her mother's old piano, and I played this song, just for her. Everyone else was talking and laughing, but she came and stood beside me. She listened to every note, and when I finished, she had tears in her eyes. She kissed me and said it was the most beautiful gift anyone had ever given her. Leonard's voice broke. He stopped talking and pressed his hand to his chest, like he was trying to hold something together that was falling apart. Clara felt tears forming in her own eyes. She did not try to stop them. We had a good life. Leonard continued after a moment. A long life. We raised 3 children. We had grandchildren. We grew old together in the same house we bought when we were young. Every year on our anniversary, I would play that song for her. It became our tradition, our secret. Even when my hands got stiff and my fingers did not move like they used to, I still played it, because it made her smile, and her smile was everything to me. He looked up at Clara for the first time since he sat down. His eyes were red and wet, but there was something else in them now. Something alive. She got sick last year. Cancer. The doctors said there was nothing they could do. She was in and out of the hospital for months. And then one night, she asked me to bring her home. She said she did not want to die in a hospital bed. She wanted to be in our house, our home, the place where we had built our whole life together. Clara could barely breathe. She sat perfectly still, letting his words wash over her. I brought her home. I set up a bed in the living room so she could look out the window at her garden. She loved that garden. She spent 50 years planting flowers, pulling weeds, watching things grow. Even when she could not get out of bed anymore, she liked to look at it. Leonard's voice dropped to a whisper. On her last night, she asked me to play the song for her. One more time. She said she wanted to hear it before she fell asleep. He stopped. His jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists on his lap. But I was tired. I had been taking care of her for so long. I had not slept more than a few hours in days, and I told her I would play it tomorrow. I said we had time. I promised her I would play it first thing in the morning. A sob escaped his throat. He covered his face with his hands. She died that night. In her sleep. Peaceful. Quiet. And I never played the song for her. I never gave her that one last thing she asked for. Clara reached out and placed her hand on his arm. She did not have words. There were no words for a pain like this. So she just sat there with him, letting him know he was not alone. Leonard lowered his hands. His face was wet with tears, but he did not look away. After she was gone, I could not play anymore. I could not even look at a piano. Every time I tried, I heard her voice asking me, and I heard myself saying tomorrow. That word haunts me. Tomorrow. Like it was a promise I could keep. But tomorrow never came. He looked down at the sheet of music again. When my children put me in this place, they cleaned out the house. They did not know what was important and what was not. They donated boxes and boxes of things. Old books, old clothes, and somewhere in all of it, this song, I thought it was gone forever. I thought I had lost the last piece of her I had left. He lifted the paper and held it to his chest. But you found it. You played it. And for a moment, I heard her again. I felt her standing beside me, just like she did on our wedding night. Clara's tears fell freely now. She did not wipe them away either. I am so sorry, she whispered. I did not know. Leonard shook his head slowly. Do not be sorry. You gave me something I thought I would never have again. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was weak, but warm. You gave me back my rose. The rain stopped sometime during the night, but Clara did not notice. She lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Leonard and the story he had told her. She could not get his words out of her head, the way his voice had cracked when he said, tomorrow, the way he held that sheet of music like it was all he had left in the world. She thought about Rose, a woman she had never met, a woman who had loved her garden and wore yellow dresses and smiled in a way that made a shy young man brave enough to ask her to dance. She thought about 54 years of marriage, 54 years of playing that same song on anniversaries, 54 years of building a life together, only for it to end with a promise that was never kept. And she thought about guilt, how it can grow inside a person like a vine, wrapping around everything, choking out the light. Leonard had stopped speaking not because he had nothing to say, but because the only words left inside him were the ones he could not forgive himself for. Tomorrow. Such a small word, such a simple thing to say, but it had broken him. Clara did not sleep that night. When morning came, She made herself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the sun rise over the wet streets. She kept thinking about what the old nurse had told her weeks ago. He is not lost. He is hiding. Now she understood what he had been hiding from. Not the world. Not the other residents. Not even his own children. He had been hiding from himself. The following Saturday, Clara arrived at the care home earlier than usual. She was nervous in a way she had not been in a long time. She did not know what to expect. Part of her worried that Leonard would have retreated back into his silence, that the moment they shared had been a one-time thing, a crack in the wall that had already sealed itself shut. But when she walked into the lobby, she saw him sitting in a different spot. Not by the window this time. He was closer to the piano. And when he saw her, he lifted his hand in a small wave. Clara felt something loosen in her chest. She smiled and walked over to him. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," he replied. His voice was still rough, still quiet. But it was there. She sat down on the piano bench and looked at him. He looked different somehow. Not healthier exactly, but lighter. Like something heavy had been lifted off his shoulders, even if just a little. "I was not sure you would want to talk again," Clara admitted. Leonard shook his head slowly. "I have been silent for too long." It did not help. It only made things worse. Clara nodded. She understood. For a while, they just sat together without speaking. The lobby filled with the usual Saturday sounds. Nurses chatting in the hallway. The squeak of wheelchairs on the floor. The distant hum of a television somewhere down the hall. Then Leonard spoke again. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I have never told anyone." Clara turned to face him fully. "I am listening." He took a deep breath. His hands rested on his knees, fingers trembling slightly. "After Rose died, I wanted to follow her. I did not see the point in staying. Everything that mattered to me was gone. The house felt empty. The garden felt empty. My whole life felt like a room with no furniture in it." Clara felt a chill run through her. She stayed quiet, letting him continue. "I thought about ending things. More than once. I would sit in the kitchen at night and think about how easy it would be. How quick. But every time I got close, I heard her voice. Not in my head. In my heart. She was telling me no. She was telling me to stay." His eyes grew wet. But he did not cry this time. He just looked at Clara with a kind of raw honesty she had never seen before. "I did not stay because I wanted to. I stayed because she would not let me go. Even from wherever she is now, she was still holding on to me." Clara reached out and took his hand. It felt thin and fragile, but warm. "She loved you," Clara said softly. "She still does." Leonard nodded. "I know. That is what makes this so hard. She loved me so much that she forgave me before I even asked. But I could not forgive myself. I kept thinking about that last night. Kept hearing her voice asking me to play, and I kept hearing myself say tomorrow. Over and over, like a record that would not stop." He paused and looked toward the piano. "When I came to this place, I decided I was done. Done talking. Done feeling. Done being part of the world. I thought if I stayed quiet long enough, maybe I would just fade away. Maybe I would finally stop hearing that word in my head. But it did not work," Clara said. "No, it did not." The silence only made it louder. They sat together for a long moment. Clara did not try to fill the space with words. She had learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone is just be there. Just sit with them in their pain without trying to fix it. After a while, Leonard looked at her again. "When you played that song last week, something happened to me. I cannot explain it. It was like a door opened somewhere deep inside. A door I had locked a long time ago. And when I heard those notes, I did not just remember Rose. I felt her. Like she was standing right beside me again. Like she had been waiting all this time for someone to let her back in." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Maybe she was. Leonard smiled. A real smile. Small and sad, but real. "I think you are right. I think she has been trying to reach me ever since she left. Through dreams. Through memories. through the sound of rain on the window, but I was too wrapped up in my guilt to hear her. He squeezed Clara's hand gently. You gave me a gift. You found something I thought was lost forever. And when you played it, you did not just bring back a song. You brought back her voice, her presence, her forgiveness. Clara shook her head. I did not do anything special. I just played what I found. Quote, No, Leonard said firmly. You did more than that. You did not give up on me. Everyone else did. My children, the nurses, even myself. But you kept playing. Week after week, you believed there was still someone inside this old shell worth reaching. His voice broke slightly, but he pushed through. That means more to me than you will ever know. Clara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She did not know what to say, so she said the only thing that felt true. Would you like me to play it again? The song? Leonard looked at the piano. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, pain, memory. But then it softened into something else. Something like peace. Yes, he said. Please. Play it for her. Play it for both of us. Clara turned to the piano. She placed her fingers on the keys, and as the first notes filled the room, Leonard closed his eyes and let the music carry him back to a church hall dance floor. A yellow dress, and the woman who had waited 54 years to hear this song one more time. This time, tomorrow had finally come. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Clara had experienced in her 2 years of volunteering at Greenfield Senior Care Home. Something had shifted. Not just in Leonard, but in the whole atmosphere of the place. It was like a window had been opened, and fresh air was finally blowing through. Leonard started talking more. Not just to Clara, but to the nurses, to the other residents, even to the man who delivered meals every afternoon. His voice was still quiet, still rough around the edges. But it was there, and people noticed. The nurses were amazed. They whispered about it in the hallways. The silent man by the window was speaking again. Some called it a miracle. Others said it was just a matter of time. But Clara knew the truth. It was not a miracle. It was music. It was memory. It was a love so strong that it refused to stay buried. Every Saturday, Clara and Leonard sat together at the piano. Sometimes she played for him. Sometimes he guided her hands across the keys, teaching her songs he had written decades ago. His fingers were stiff and slow, but they remembered the notes. They remembered everything. He told her stories while they played. Stories about Rose. About their children when they were young. About the house they built together, the garden she loved, the way she laughed at his bad jokes, even after 50 years of hearing them. He told her about their first fight and their last dance. He told her about the quiet mornings when they would sit on the porch and watch the sun come up. Not saying anything because they did not need to. Clara listened to every word. She wrote some of them down in a little notebook she kept in her bag. She did not want to forget. She did not want any of it to disappear again. One afternoon, she brought a small recording device to the care home. She asked Leonard if she could record him playing his songs. He hesitated at first. He said his hands were not what they used to be. He said the music would not sound the way it was supposed to, but Clara told him it did not matter. She told him the music was not about perfection. It was about preservation. It was about making sure these songs would never be lost again. Leonard thought about it for a long moment. Then he nodded. That day, they recorded 3 of his compositions. His fingers stumbled in a few places. His timing was not always perfect, but the emotion was there. The love was there, and when he finished playing, he looked at Clara with tears in his eyes and said, "Thank you." Word eventually reached Leonard's children. His son called the care home one evening, confused and cautious. He had heard from the nurses that his father was speaking again, that he was playing piano, that he seemed like a different person. The son came to visit the following weekend. Clara was not there when it happened, but one of the nurses told her about it later. She said Leonard and his son sat together for almost 2 hours. She said there were tears, She said there were apologies. She said it was the longest conversation they had in years. After that, the visits became more frequent. The son came every other week. The daughter, who lived farther away, started calling on Sunday evenings. The grandchildren sent letters and drawings. The family that had drifted apart was slowly finding its way back together. Clara watched it all happen with a quiet kind of joy. She had not expected any of this when she first noticed the silent man by the window. She had only wanted to reach him, to remind him that he was not alone. But what she had done was so much bigger than that. She had helped him find his voice again. And in doing so, she had helped him find his family too. 3 months passed. Winter turned to spring. The trees outside the care home began to bloom. Rose's favorite season, Leonard told her once. She always said spring was proof that life never really ends. It just waits for the right moment to begin again. Then one morning in early April, Clara received a phone call. It was the head nurse at Greenfield. Her voice was gentle but serious. She told Clara that Leonard had passed away during the night. Peacefully. In his sleep, with the sheet music for his song resting on the nightstand beside him. Clara did not say anything for a long time. She just stood in her kitchen, holding the phone, feeling the weight of the news settle over her like a heavy blanket. She had known this day would come. Leonard was old, he was tired, and in some ways, she believed he had been ready to go ever since Rose left. But knowing something and feeling it are two very different things. She cried that morning. She cried for Leonard, for Rose, for the love they shared and the guilt he carried, and the peace he finally found. She cried because she would miss him, and she cried because she was grateful. Grateful that she had been part of his story, grateful that she had not given up. A few days later, Leonard's son came to the care home to collect his father's belongings. He asked to speak with Clara. When she arrived, he handed her a small envelope with her name written on the front in shaky handwriting. Inside was a letter. Clara opened it with trembling hands. The words were written slowly, carefully, like each one had taken great effort. But they were clear. It read, "Dear Clara, I do not have the words to thank you for what you have given me. You found a piece of my heart that I thought was gone forever. You played it back to life, and in doing so, you gave me something I never thought I would have again. You gave me back my Rose. For months, I carried the weight of a promise I did not keep. I told her tomorrow, and tomorrow never came. That guilt followed me into silence. It followed me into darkness. It nearly followed me into the ground. But then you sat down at that piano, and you played a song that no one else in the world knew. And suddenly, she was there again, standing beside me, smiling at me, forgiving me. I do not know how you found that music. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was fate. Maybe it was her, reaching across from wherever she is now, using your hands to bring us back together. Whatever it was, I am grateful. I am going to see her soon. I can feel it. And for the first time in a long time, I am not afraid. I am not ashamed. I am ready. Please keep playing our song, not just for me, for all the people like me, the ones who have forgotten how to speak, the ones who are hiding from themselves, the ones who need someone to remind them that they are still here. You have a gift, Clara. Do not ever stop sharing it. With love and gratitude, Leonard. Clara read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her notebook, beside the stories she had written down. That Saturday, she returned to Greenfield Senior Care Home. She sat down at the old piano in the faded yellow lobby. The chair beside her was empty now. But she did not feel alone. She placed her fingers on the keys, and she played. She played for Leonard. She played for Rose. She played for every forgotten soul in that building, and every person who had ever been too broken to ask for help. And somewhere, in a place beyond the music, 2 people who had waited a lifetime to dance together again were finally holding hands. The song was finished, but the love never ended.